Now recording the call. So what I will do is I will introduce you. How do I say your family name?
Like where there's smoke, there's fire. Feiertag.
Feiertag.
It's a German name that means holiday.
Okay. Feiertag. So, Howard, where are you living at the moment?
Where? I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing that. Go ahead, tell me.
Where are you living at the moment?
Oh, I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia.
In Virginia?
Yes,
Howard, can you just move your computer, because your head's gone down to the bottom. Can you just move back where you were? No, because now I've got half a picture frame. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, much better.
I moved the frame, right, yeah.
That's perfect. Keep it like that if you can. That'd be great. Yeah? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you
across the screen with the time, the minutes, I guess, 23.020304.
Yeah, that's just how long we've been on the call. Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't know if it interfered with you or not. It's okay. It just takes away part of your face, but that's okay.
Yeah. So now we all good. So good afternoon. James Morgan here at the University of Westminster. I'm really excited today because I'm interviewing a legend from the hospitality and meetings industry, Howard Feiertag. Howard, how are you?
Hi, James. I'm doing very well, thank you.
So, Howard, before we start the interview, you tell us a bit about you, where you are right now, because we can see your wonderful garden through the window. So, yeah, just tell us a little bit about you and some of the notable awards that you've won over the years, because I think it's really interesting.
Yes, of course, I'm not a young guy. I've been around a while. But in Blacksburg, Virginia, we have a university here called Virginia Tech. And I'm on the faculty in hospitality and tourism management. And it's interesting to learn that unknown to me, all of a sudden, 2 years ago, they decided to name the department after me. So it's now called the Howard Feiertag Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management. So I'm not retired, though. I'm still working. So I'm teaching most of my courses involving sales. I talk about sales to group market and what salespeople have to do. That's what I'm doing now. But throughout the years, I've been here 30 years. And before that, I had 30 years in hospitality industry with convention bureaus and with the different hotels. And it's interesting to know that I don't know how many people can say the same thing, but I've never applied for a job in my life. I've always been recruited from one company to another, and I'm the type of person that can't say no. So I moved along with whoever wanted me.
That's amazing. So Howard, how old are you, in fact?
I'll be 93 in July.
Wow, that's amazing. So what a career. What an amazing career. And I'm just going to read out to our viewers some of the amazing awards that you've had. You've been admitted to the Hall of Fame and the Hospitality Sales and Marketing International Association. You've received the President's Award from Meeting Professionals International, and a whole host. I mean, there's another 10 awards here. I'm not going to go through each one. But what we were going to do today in the interview is we were going to take a walk through the decades of your experience. And we first start with your first job in the meetings and hospitality industry was at the Charlotte Convention Bureau. So tell us a bit about that, Howard.
Okay. I was in Charlotte. I worked for a company that did insurance investigation. That was my job. I've never in sales, but I did a good job in investigating for insurance companies. So we had a management company. And I've been with them, I guess, for about 8 years. And they moved me to Charlotte, to the regional office, and I was there. I was very active in the community. I was working on major drives. I was active with NAACP. I was active with the Cancer Drive. There was an organization in the United States at that time called the Junior Chamber of Commerce, And once you're age 35, you got to get out. It's just for everybody under 35. I was president of that organization. I was involved with the Chamber of Commerce as well, with the various committees. And I met an awful lot of people. I got very involved in the industry without knowing anything about the industry or sales particularly. I didn't consider myself a salesperson. The Chamber of Commerce decided that they want to grow. And in order to grow, they had to have a convention bureau. So officials of the bureau got together and said, well, okay, we're going to start a convention bureau. We're going to advertise and find someone to lead it for us. And they did it. They advertised around. And then the chairman decided to give me a call, invited me to lunch one day and said, you know what, we're interviewing people here, but I think you would be a good guy to run the Chamber of Commerce Convention Bureau. I said, what? I said, what am I don't even know anything about convention bureaus. I don't know hospitality. I don't know convention bureaus. Well, I'm not going to be good. Oh, yeah, you know a lot of people. You'll be fine, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, one thing led to another, the committees, and they decided, okay, you got the job if you want it. I said, well, you're taking a big chance, but we'll do it. But let me tell you something interesting about that, the point of what I thought about at the time, not having been in sales. You got to know people. You got to make contact. You got to develop relationships. So here I am saying, okay, I got this Charlotte, North Carolina Convention Bureau. Where do I start? What do I do? I decided to have an advisory board. And I brought in 42 people that I had known over the last few years, working with him on different projects, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, you know, from every industry, not every, but a lot of industries. And we had luncheon at a hotel, and they didn't know why I invited them to lunch, but we had luncheon. And I said, you're on my advisory committee. And I said, I don't know what the hell to do with this job, but you people know more about it than I do. You all belong to clubs, societies, religious groups. You have all kinds of connections. You go to meetings all the time. You go out of town, lots of different meetings with organizations. Why don't you bring them here? And that hit it. And they all got excited. And sure enough, I mean, overnight, believe me when I say overnight, they kept calling me and writing me and getting together. Now, don't forget, there's no computer technology at the time. So it was either letters coming and going and phone calls. But every time they went out of town to an association meeting, they talked to the people. Hey, come on to Charlotte. Bring it here to Charlotte. We'll take it. So I had all those salespeople working for me. And that's how it got going. And then I learned from that. And I went to a few meetings myself, of course, you know, to see how it's done and who, what, when, and where, conventions and meetings and different conferences. So I participated with my team, you know, with these 42 salespeople. So we made a hit, and we really did very, very well. And of course, you know, without computer technology like we have today, it was a little more difficult, but we didn't realize that it was difficult. We did what we had to do with what we had.
Yeah.
Very well. And that job only lasted 2 years.
But Howard, what was the kind of business meetings facilities like in Charlotte at that time?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. The one big hotel was the Queen Charlotte Hotel with 400 rooms. At that time, believe it or not, the hotel was about 40 years old. It was in ill repair. Very, very bad part of town. Very, very, very bad part. People drinking and drunks and drugs. Very limited parking space. Very limited. But they did have a big meeting room for meetings and conventions, and they were doing that before I got there. You know, I mean, they were in the meetings business for those groups that wanted to come to Charlotte. So they did some business, of course, and they had a good restaurant, and they did banquets, and it's working out. Then there was another hotel called the Barringer, very, very nice hotel with limited meeting facilities. But they had three rooms with limited capacity, maybe of 100. So they were doing smaller company meetings, training meetings. And then around the city, we had a lot of small hotels. We had Holiday Inns and a lot of no-name brands we wouldn't even recognize today. and they had limited space. There was one thing in Charlotte, though, at the time. It wasn't a convention hall. It was called the Coliseum. And that was a rather large facility, but it was for, I don't know, they never sold it to the point of going after meetings. I don't know if they had salespeople at the time, but it was there if you had a group and they wanted to use it. One thing about that, I remember the Coliseum was a great facility to use for large meetings. And we could put maybe close to 1,000 people in there for a meeting.
Wow.
But there were no hotels nearby. It was another part of town.
How much was a hotel at that point in at the Charlotte Hotel? What were they charging for a room night there?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I'm going to ask people to guess what it was, but nobody guesses right. The standard rate in town was $6 a night. $6 a night. And then some of the people that came, the groups that came, whoever was in charge, because they wanted to negotiate a lower rate. But that was kind of the standard rate around town. There wasn't much going on like today with negotiations, with contracts.
Yeah.
In fact, I might mention, whether it's believable or not, and those a lot of old timers that have been around in the 60s will know what I'm talking about because they did what I did, The contract was a shake of hands, believe it or not. And then a letter confirming everything. I don't even think we knew what a contract was, but we didn't have a lawyer. So you say, now the lawyers take over and you have 20-page contracts, But in those days, you shook hands, you made a deal, and they agreed to come, and this is what they were going to get, and that was it. And then you wrote a letter confirming. That's what the hotels did.
So, was there like a kind of reservation system at that point, or?
Well, the reservation system was ridiculous compared to what we have today. And you want a reservation, you call the hotel if you knew it. But don't forget, travel agents were very big in those days. Because it was the travel agents that knew where the hotels were in what cities. They had the information about it. And if you want to rent a room in Charlotte or in Podunk or wherever, you go to a travel agent, they'll make the reservation for you. And the travel agent got a commission for it from the hotel. So you didn't have to pay the travel agent. Now, that's gone today. You know that.
Yeah.
And a lot of travel agents are still in business, but they're doing tour and travel. Mainly, airline crews and airline tickets they handle or work with reservations for airlines and also cruise ships and resort hotels. So they're still in business, but not as many as they were. That's a different kind of business. So that's where they made the reservations. There were no real systems for calling. There were no 800 numbers at the time. We had fax machines, we had telephone, and that was about it. Of course, from the file system, everybody had all the hotels in town that we worked with. And we had paper files. That's all you had, paper files.
Mm. And, so what, Howard? What was it for a mid-sized meeting of 100 people? What did we didn't have projectors or PowerPoint in those days. So what was the kind of room setup or the presentation kind of? What did a typical meeting look like?
Well, the typical meeting was, and it's pretty much the same. Not quite, but they had a gathering, all get together, and maybe they had a meal planned, and maybe not. But if they didn't have a meal planned, there was a lot of difficulty in getting out of the hotel and then going and finding a restaurant and never getting back. So they lost a lot of people. Went out and maybe had a couple of drinks. Oh, by the way, Charlotte was no liquor. The hotels didn't have any bars.
Oh, wow.
Stores, you could buy liquor yourself, but the hotels could not sell you liquor. So you couldn't have any bars. So people went out and then didn't come back to the meeting, maybe, so that could be too. So that was one of the issues with it.
So then how did you move from Charlotte over to Orlando in Florida? Did you get another job offer?
Well, here's what happened then. So as I mentioned earlier, that job I had was only about 2 years, because in 1964, I got a call from the Chamber of Commerce in Orlando. I never heard of Orlando. And they heard about me. They heard about Charlotte, blah, blah, blah. And we'd like to talk to you about doing the same thing here, starting a convention bureau. Now, I didn't know Orlando. Well, I didn't do any research, really. I don't know why. But so I took a trip, went to Orlando. And oh, my God. I got to the airport, was all outdoors. It was a Quonset hut, And everything, the baggage was handling outdoors. A beautiful time. But Orlando was cows and oranges. That's what you knew Orlando for, cows. And I mean, seriously, even almost downtown, they had, if there was a downtown, yeah, there was a little bit. And, but there were only 2 hotels. And I said, you want to have conventions? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Well, we want to do something for the hotels in town and blah, blah. Well, there's only 2 hotels, but there's a lot of motels, no-name motels. Nobody had a brand name in those days. You didn't see a Marriott then, or a Hilton. So I'm one of the guys who can't say no. I said, okay, I went to work. But that didn't last very long. It started out, and I tried to do the same thing, which I did to a certain extent. People were cooperative. The 2 hotels were cooperative. And I have to tell you a quickie. If you don't mind, a little personal story. But anyway, it was a beautiful place. And I said, it is a beautiful city to come to, a place for a meeting. And, sunshine, but there's not much to do. There were no attractions. There weren't that much there. But I thought, okay, well, we'll try it. But within less than a year, I get a call from a real estate company in New York, and that they bought 2 hotels in Charlotte. And they said, we'd like to hire you to go back to Charlotte. You were there before, and be director of sales for the 2 hotels. Again, I never applied for a job, no resume, nothing. They just wanted to hire me. I said, okay. I couldn't say no. So I went back to Charlotte.
And did they have liquor in the hotel by that point, or was it still dry?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did they have liquor in the hotel when you went back, or was
no, it was still dry. Oh yeah, it was still dry. They didn't have liquor for a long time. So then one of the hotels was that old 400-room convention hotel, and then the other one was the Barringer with the two sizable hotels in town, and the rest were motels around town. So and that lasted a while. Lots of good, interesting stories about that. But still, no computers, and no air conditioning and no television.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump. So that kind of covers the 60s, and we didn't have a lot of technology then. But if we jump over to the set, the one thing I do want to talk about in the 60s was we had a lot more jet engine travel happening in the 60s. And we know that we had the associations, the association conventions really took off then, didn't they?
Yes, the associations started to expand. More and more types of associations were organized, because of industry, different industries, whatever the industry was. Someone said we ought to get ourselves organized and get together because we have people from all over the country that do the same thing I do. And they started, but you're right. So, within the 10-year period there, I think that grew considerably with the national associations. And then some of them branched out to state. Give you an example, HSMA was organized, and they were back, I don't know when they got started, but they started to have state chapters. And then other organizations said, well, we're large enough now. We got a lot of people coming from Virginia and New York and Washington. They ought to have their own chapter and be affiliated with the national organization. So then the regional meetings started. That's the regional meetings with the state organizations. They wanted to have their meeting. Then they want to have educational conferences. That came next. First was the association, right? You get the association meeting, and someone within the association and the staff people say, well, we have to educate, so we're going to have training sessions and educational programming. So they had little meetings going on. So now the smaller properties were getting some meeting business in all states, not only North Carolina, but there. So I was there until 67. Yeah, so I was at that hotel like from 65 to 67. That's right. So 67 is when I made another move, and that's when I moved to Virginia.
And then in the I'm just looking at my notes here. You stayed at Charlotte till 67, and then you moved over to American Motor Inns. So tell me about that, because that kind of went 67 to 73.
Right, that was 67. Another interesting story. I hate to keep talking about myself, but it is a really interesting story.
It's all about you today, Howard.
I want to talk about the $6 room and how I stole a piece of business for $7. And this happened when I was with the convention hotel. And I get a call one day from someone I never knew. They'd like to meet me. I said, okay. So they came. They happened to be the owners of a new hotel opened up called the Heart of Charlotte. Got it? So I'm in Charlotte now, sales manager for 2 hotels. So I invited them. What do I know? I invite everybody for lunch. So I invited them for lunch. And they said, we want to talk to you because my manager over at the new hotel we just built said you were stealing business from them. But they didn't think that was too good a thing to do. I said, well, I don't think I stole any business. I don't know. What was it? And they told me the name. I said, well, I don't know. Let me go look up the file. So I looked up the file. I said, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe I don't know if I really stole it or not. But I see here that your property was offering them a room for $6, and I got the business for $7. But here's a good one, if you don't mind, a little personal story. So they said, what have you got? That's an old dump. They said, you got an old hotel, you don't have air conditioning, you don't have a swimming pool, and you don't have TV. We have TV, we have air conditioning, we have a swimming pool, we have it's a motor inn, but we have meeting rooms. So what is it? What have you got? Oh no, what has the hotel got that we don't have that we're able to get $1 more? You ready for this?
Yeah.
All I did was go like this.
Excellent. It's all about
that led to my next job. 2 weeks later, they called me up, wanted me to have lunch with them, and then wanted me to come be director of sales. And they had 22 Holiday Inns at the time. I didn't know it, but that's what they had. They were operating Holiday Inns, and they had 22 hotels around the country. They didn't have any salespeople.
Was this the American Motor Inns you're talking about?
That is what it was.
Was that American Motor Inns you're talking about?
Yes, that was American Motor Inn. That was the company, yeah.
Wow.
In 1967, I joined them as the director of sales, and they even gave me a car. That was a big deal. That made the move. I said, oh boy, they're going to get a new car. Because I had to travel from place to place and set up sales systems. And that's what they wanted me to do, because they didn't have salespeople. They didn't know these people were not hotel people. They were just business people, And they said, well, we need to have sales department. So we want you to come and set it up.
So, I mean, Howard, for me, that's interesting, because when you were at American Motor Inns at that time, what we saw is that we saw computers being used.
Yes,
so
the
personal computer came in the 70s, didn't it?
That's
did
right.
That change your work dynamic at all?
It sure did. Yeah, it did a lot. It used to be that salespeople, if the hotels had salespeople, they would have secretaries, because they would do the letter writing, because salespeople couldn't type, for whatever reason, or didn't want to type. So everybody had to have a secretary to write these letters. Confirmation. Then when the computer system came in, it's a whole different story. They still didn't know how to read. I mean, I was a typist anyway. I learned typing in high school, so I was okay. But so many salespeople didn't know how to type, so you have to know something about typing to type on a computer. It was interesting, very interesting situation when everybody was confused and we didn't know who was going to train us, who was going to tell them what to do and how to do and why to do. And
so Howard, at that point, what did the typical meeting or convention look like? Was it very different to the 60s and the 70s? Or?
Yes, I'll tell you what happened. Because at that time in 67, maybe around the early 70s, something like that, the more and more associations became better organized. I should say that. But more qualified people operating associations. And then the associations became smaller. Not that the big ones became smaller, they were more opening up that were smaller so they could take the smaller hotels were able to handle them. And all industries, if you can name an industry, toilet makers or whatever you want to call them, there's an industry for everything and everybody.
Mm.
And then also in the 70s, we noticed, it even happened before then, there were a lot of different meetings going on. And I discovered this by accident because I wasn't even aware of it when I was in Charlotte. But there were a lot of trade shows, exhibits. If you manufactured men's suits or women's pocketbooks even, or women's cosmetics, you would have a little trade show somewheres, mostly Washington, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, major cities would have it, And they would have buyers from the different stores that sold the product. The department stores would want to go and take a look at all these new products. So it became a big product, and it's still going on today. Nothing different. It just got bigger, that's all. So more and more companies that manufactured a particular product decided to have a trade show where they could bring in buyers from department stores, I guess, to look over their wares and place orders, which was big boom business for them. That really was a big opportunity. The market was terrific. And more of those products started to put on shows. Really, I mean, even today, it's still very big in the major cities.
And what about in the 70s, as far as kind of business conferences, not associations in particular, but maybe internal sales conferences or...
Oh, that's right.
Was that all going on in the 70s?
Yes, you found more of, for example, insurance companies, national insurance companies. They were having meetings back in the 60s. They were having they were small, but they were all over the country. They were having their one-day meetings or two-day meetings. And you found that they had educational programming, what to do, how to do it, talking about their products, talking about whatever. So you name an industry, and little by little, they all got into this business of having training meetings. And then when the National Association started to break down and decided, well, we need to have state organizations because we're getting big now, and they can have their own meeting. It was 1972 that I helped organize the Meeting Professionals Internationally, MPI. Actually it started in 1970. And we started getting together and putting ourselves, we wanted to make a club out of it, people who plan meetings. We never heard of the expression before, meeting planners. People who planned meetings before then, I don't know what they were called. They just had different jobs with different organizations, and they were responsible for putting on a meeting, that's all.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we got together and said, let's form a club. And the club grew tremendously over the years. And now all the states have chapters. And same in all national organizations. I don't know them all. There's so many, but with every national association, you can bet that there are state chapters.
Yeah.
State groups that meet. And not only for the meeting itself, but for training. And they have a wide breakdown of different smaller groups going into training managers, training salespeople, training auditors, you name it. People need training. So that's the market. The meetings market grew tremendously.
And so you were right at the the stage that MPI was born. Basically, is that's kind of what you were in right at the start, weren't you?
Yeah, right at the beginning. We had we got Jimmy Jones. He passed away a long time ago. One of the founders. There were 6 or 7 or 8, and they all passed away already. They're all gone. But not all. There's still a couple around. But it just grew. I don't know how, why, but within the year, I think within the year after 72, right after, well, within a few months, I should say, 1972, we had 100 members.
Wow.
So we said the first 100, I don't know how we said that. Someone said, well, we're going to call them charter members. Everybody that came in within the first few months, I guess, of our organization, word got out. We'll call them charter members because they came in early. Then bingo, it just went crazy.
In those days, how did you communicate with each other? By telephone?
Telephone was it. That was it. The computer technology came in. I'm trying to think of the year, golly, that we started putting stuff together. Because it had to be well after 72, but it was all telephone. So we all talked to each other. We sent notes to each other, and then looking forward to getting together for the meeting. And the meeting was very important at that time.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way we can talk to each other and communicate and, exchange.
Exactly.
You can't very well do it all the time over the phone or by letter. So we had that one-on-one, and we'd just be getting together, have a few drinks, exchange ideas, who did this and how do you do that and why this and why that,
Yeah. Do you remember the first email you ever sent, Howard?
God, I wish I could. That would be interesting. Oh, I don't. It doesn't ring a bell. It just doesn't ring a bell. Like when and where was that?
Yeah.
I remember.
It was the early 70s, so you're more than likely.
I'm going to go back I have notes from way back somewhere in my file. I've kept a lot.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I just thought that might be interesting if you'd remember that. So you were at the American Motor Inns, and then you went to Servico Management.
Which one?
You were at Motor Inns from 67 to 73, and then you went to Servico Management in 73 as senior VP.
Well, that was in Memphis. They were organizing a group like American Motor Inn. They had some Holiday Inns. They knew the president of American Motor Inns, and at that time, 73, 74, yeah. So I grew with the organization. Vice president marketing. Then I got into operations a little bit, and so I was senior vice president. And then they wanted to draft me, the owner of this new company that they put together, starting in Memphis. So he discussed it with my president first before he approached me. They were talking about it. And so they agreed to let me go. It was a very, very nice increase in salary. So I went to Memphis and been with them.
And what was Memphis like in terms of the kind of meetings offer? And
they were doing very well. Memphis was doing very well. In fact, a little story about one hotel there had a oh my goodness, what was it? A black group, and still, and getting back to Charlotte, in the 60s, there was a big difference than today, of course, with the black market. But anyway, this one hotel in Memphis had nothing to do with me or our company, but they were all doing meeting business very well in Memphis. There was a lot of it going on. But this one hotel brought in a black group. That was about 1973, 74, something like that. And anyway, there was a big stink in town about it. It ended up that they had to close the hotel. No one gave them any business.
Wow.
People were going there. they had to close it down, and they ended up converting it to a condo or something.
Wow.
But that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an interesting thing. And well, there's lots of little stories I don't get into. I have lots of stories, believe me. Anyway, interesting about this company in Memphis, they were just getting organized, and business people didn't know the hotel business, didn't know much about it. They bought a few Holiday Inns, and that's how the connection got started. And that went well. We're doing a few things for them, but they didn't have very many hotels. They were just getting started. Wanted me to help them get started. That lasted about a year, a little over a year, when I got a call from my old company, American Motor Inns. You got to come back. Everything is all screwed up since you left. So they got me to come back to Roanoke. In 1974, 1975, about 1975.
And you spent nearly 10 years there, didn't you?
Yes, sure. Well, from 67, right? So there.
Yeah.
Then I stayed for him a while, because I was never looking. I was never looking for a job, so I was very happy with what I was doing.
Yeah. So what were you doing as senior VP of operations in at American Motor Inns?
Well, American Motor Inns, I'm getting too much into the personal thing, but so they said, you got to come back. Everything's screwed up. The restaurants are losing money. Now, I never had anything to do with restaurants. I'm not a food guy. That was not my bag. We had a vice president of food and beverage. And they said, what's his name? He said, he's screwing up and he don't know how to make money, but you know how to make money. I didn't even realize I did, but so I went into turn things around in the restaurant business. They had, at that time, we had 50 hotels.
Wow.
I was with them. We grew from 22 to 50. So I was involved with that part too. So that's why I got into operations. And we had a lot of salespeople. I had regional salespeople. They took over the sales, but I still felt I was in charge of sales. That was me, but I got into everything with the president of the company. Anyway, I did turn things around in the restaurant. The story is so interesting, it's unbelievable, but now's not the time for it. But one of these days you'll get it. And turned it around. Profitability right away. The things that I did that no other companies were doing what I was doing. And I don't even know why I did it. It was just, it came to me, you ought to do this, you ought to do this. And everything I touched was gold. I mean, everything I touched worked. I don't know if I ever made a bad decision. I mean, frankly.
Good for you, yeah. But Howard, what about the difference between the motor inns in the kind of late 70s compared to when you were there in the late 60s? Were there a lot of changes in terms of the hospitality offer, the meetings offer?
Absolutely, yes, yeah, a good question. Yeah, because I saw the change, and I guess maybe I was part of it. But we started expanding. We had a motor, we had a Holiday Inn, but we didn't have meeting rooms, maybe a little room. We didn't have a big restaurant. We didn't have a bar, of course, depending on the state we were in. So they were all small. Then, of course, we realized that the business was growing. The American Motor did exceptionally well with the growth and start building, and what we were paying for a room, nothing like today, of course, back in those days. So, and the mortgage was paid, and we didn't know money. I mean, it was really working very well, but we expanded the meetings. This is what happened. When I came on board and we started to hire salespeople, and I said, there's no point having a salesperson in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, with a Holiday Inn with no meeting space. What are you going to do with a salesperson? So we started building meeting rooms, and some of them, got pretty large. And we just took advantage of the opportunity at the time to grow with the industry. And you say, look, this thing is growing, more and more associations. There are more meetings going on. Jet service, more people are traveling. And people are doing business all over the country and moving people around. And the government agencies that were so big. We ended up giving a government rate. Now everybody has a government rate, but we started out early with providing a special rate for government employees. You know? So we grew because we knew that the business was there. But that's why we had salespeople, to get the business.
Yeah.
No point hiring a salesperson when there's nothing to sell, right? So yes, we did. Good point. We did grow really rapidly with the size of the properties. And it worked very well. The company made money. We did very well, very well personally. And the company did, and all the salespeople did. And that lasted, well, there was all those good years in the 70s and then into the 80s, 83. Yeah, I was there with them until 1983, yeah.
Yeah, you got a great memory, because I'm reading your CV here, and you absolutely spot on. 83, you left, and then you went back to, is it Servico or Serviso?
It's the same company I went to Memphis. Nah.
So you went back to Memphis?
No, they moved to Florida. West Palm headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida, and they had 60 hotels.
Wow.
And we were 50 with American Motor Inns. So the same president, they all knew each other very well. You know, my president and that president, and they were good. So they went back to him and said, "Get Howard back with us now." So I went down there to Florida, and then in 1983, yeah.
At that time in 1983 is when we started seeing the first mobile phones come out, wasn't it?
Yes, that's when we got a little more modified. Yeah. So during those years, we changed. Our file system changed. The system changed. Delphi came into effect somewhere in the 80s with the automated sales system. So we got into that for hotels, and that company did exceptionally well. And they were the first ones out. It's called Delphi, and I think they said they had 70% of the market all over the world with their particular system. And then I'm trying to think of a company that bought them. Anyway, that's another story. But yeah, the expansion. What happened? You saw meetings grew, but see what also grew was publications.
Interesting.
And of course, with computer technology, a lot of articles and magazines went into the computer, but more and more magazines were out, and then more and more associations got organized, and there were more companies. They all had to have meetings. Had to go somewhere. And the high end, they would go on all resort hotels, the expensive hotels, the 4-star, 5-star hotels. And that wasn't our market. We were mid-priced. But so we did a lot. And we did a lot of training meetings, 100 people less. So a lot of our motor inns that we had, of the 50, most of them they all had meeting rooms, but most of them had a capacity of maybe not more than 150, 200. And a few of the hotels had larger space and more meeting rooms. But they all did well in that market. But we hired salespeople to do it. And,
and with the attendees for those smaller meetings coming from more local, regional companies rather than further afield.
You're absolutely right. That's what it was. Yes, that's what existed for the growth of that motel business, because that's where the meeting market was. We were going after national conventions. We couldn't handle it. But for 100 people, for 150 people, we were perfect at some of the properties. And of course, we even had our own meetings, don't forget. We had auditors, traveling auditors. We had accountant system. Each property had a controller. We had manager meetings. We had our own meetings, but we went do that at our own hotels. But we had regional meetings. I had national sales meetings, but it was always at one of our own hotels. I wouldn't go to another hotel, of course. But we did our own meetings too. So hotel people had meetings.
And how did the pricing work in the 80s for the meetings? Because obviously you needed the room, the catering, the meeting space.
Well, you also measured the value of a group meeting, and that's where we got into the business of negotiating, because everybody wanted to pay less, no matter what your rate was. Even if they can afford it, they didn't want to pay it. So we said, okay, let's what food and beverage we're going to get out of it. We started charging rental. And one time we were charging for telephone use. You may remember that. In the hotel, you checked in, you pay the fee for using the phone. Not anymore.
Yeah.
So
back in the day, in say the 60s and 70s, before computers and reservation systems, it was all done on paper. I mean, how were the rates determined then? And what would it be? You publish a brochure or a pamphlet, or how did that work?
Yeah, this is really interesting, because now, of course, no manager nobody creates their own rates. Now they all have a management company that runs it, and they have people who've done a lot of research, and they have history. And they go back to the history on a per day basis, and what days of the week, what's your average rate on certain days, and what your occupancy was, and they have it all computerized and all figured out what you ought to charge. So now the salesperson has no input really, and most managers don't. They're told what your rate is going to be. Back then, the manager decided what they ought to charge, and maybe and a lot of the owners, listen to this though, most of the owners of the hotels in those days didn't have any experience in the industry. It was a good investment to buy a motel, to build one. And it was from a business standpoint, that's good. Yeah, we do a lot of business. People are traveling. So they didn't know. So you hired someone, hopefully that knew what the hell they were doing. Manager was the guy, and said, well, we ought to check around town. Who's charging what? And our rate depended on what everybody else was charging. That's how you came up with a rate. I'm not kidding. There's nothing sophisticated about it. And we made money that way in our company, because our owners, American Motor, didn't know a damn thing about hotels.
Yeah, it's very different.
Come up with the rate, as long as you made money.
Exactly. So technology or not, at the end of the day, it's about the profit and the investment, right?
Yeah, well, that I never knew, because I never gotten that deep into it, what the investment was. But that's what they had to measure, of course.
Yeah.
How much money they made.
So you stayed at your second stint at Servico. It was 83 to 89. And what did you do after that?
But with American Motor Engine, when I moved to Servico.
Yeah, so you were at Servico from 83 to 89. That was after American Motors. Yes. And what did you do when you left Servico? When you were in Florida at that time, weren't you?
Yes, I was in Florida, and in 1988 there was a conference going on at the Homestead Hotel of some kind. I forgot what, but there were some situations that I knew the department head of the HTM department, where I am now, with Virginia Tech in Virginia. I have some. Well, I'll tell you how I met him. We owned a Holiday Inn in Blacksburg.
Oh.
So I get a call from the manager there, and one of my vice presidents, and turned it over to me. They didn't know what to do with it. That the hotel on campus of Virginia Tech, it was Donaldson Brown Hotel and Conference Center, it was called. Was stealing business or taking business from the Holiday Inn. And that wasn't fair, because they're a state organization, they don't pay taxes. So they could charge the rate without taxes, so they said. So I said, well, I don't know anything about that. I'll just go down there. This was 1983, 84, yeah. That way, I said, I never heard of Virginia Tech at the time, you know. But I went and met him and said, what's the score? What's going on here? And first I talked to our manager at Blacksburg, and then I went over to the university and I met the head of the department. And he says, well, we have no control over this. There's somebody else at the university, blah, blah, blah. So we went and talked to this so-and-so with the university about this. And right away he says, you know what? You're right. You're right. We shouldn't be out there looking for business from other hotels. We ought to get business from the faculty and the staff and everybody here at the hotel, because they belong to groups and associations. Get them to solicit to get the business, and we shouldn't be taking business from another hotel. So they set up a rule. This is very interesting. They set up a rule that the hotel on campus will not solicit business off campus. The people should not come over. The salespeople working there should not come off campus looking for business that other hotels have. And that lasts until today. It's still valid.
Wow.
So that's what I started with them. So I got to know them, and they put me on the advisory board of the hotel group. I said, okay, yeah, I'll be on the advisory board. So I got to know the department head. All right. So that's the story. That was early. Okay. So now, and that was I'm sorry, that was while I was still at American Motor Inns. That's before 83. So now, when Servico, which is a hotel in West Palm Beach, they had 60 hotels, so they brought me in, and I'll tell you what happened after that. So in 88, there was a convention going on at the hotel, wherever it was, and I called the manager, the department head at the university, the one I was doing business, talking to. I said, I understand you're on the program too, like I am. I'm speaking on the program, and you're a speaker as well. So you want to pick me up at the airport and give me a ride to the... Oh, he was so happy to do that. He said, oh, no big deal. I'll pick you up at the airport. So we had time to schmooze together and talk and whatnot. Anyway, so before, when our meeting was over, he said to me, why don't you come with us and teach? I said, no, I'm not a teacher. I don't know anything about teaching. He said, well, you've been doing workshops. And by the way, in the 80s and through the 90s, I did a lot of workshops all over the country, in Europe and Japan and China. And I was all over doing sales workshops. So he said, you're doing workshops all over the place, you're training people. I said, yeah, but they're not undergraduates. They're business people. That's what I deal with. Well, one thing led to another. I went to work for him. I left Servico in 89. And in February of 89, I joined Virginia Tech.
Wow. And you've been at Virginia Tech ever since, teaching the hospitality and tourism graduates. And what are the courses that they run at Virginia Tech in the hospitality and tourism school?
Oh, and the courses have grown tremendously now, getting into things that I don't even understand, with technology. And the students are a lot different in the 30 years' time. That's not fair talking about it, but they changed. Students change. They're so used to computer technology, got into that, they don't know anything else.
Oh, Howard, can we just pause there for a minute? Your screen looks different now. We've got the bottle.
Oh, I'm back like this again. Huh?
Yeah. So just tell me how it's changed how's things changed at Virginia Tech since you started?
Well, more courses have come on that have to do with technology, of course, because that's where we are. And Now we're getting deeper and deeper into all the subjects that I'm not into because I'm kind of a basic guy. And I've never gotten myself educated to the point where I would know anything that they're talking about. At most meetings with the professors are entirely different than I am, and they all know that, and they all agree with it. They're better educated. Yeah, they're all. I never went to graduate school. I was lucky enough to get a degree, but have PhDs that operate the university, and they're way up here. And there's a big difference in how they think and how they operate, and how I think and how I operate, and what I teach. So that's a big difference. And of course, the students, they've been raised on a computer as a kid. And you go into a restaurant these days, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, and they're all on their cell phone. Well, instead of talking to each other, they're on the cell phone. You've got student people now. Well, not only students, adults as well, and they're on there sending text messages to each other, and they're only sitting across the table from one another. And they're texting each other. They don't talk.
So Howard, let's go. Let's rely on your memory a bit. What do you think? If you think of a convention, an association convention today, and think back 30 years, what changes have you seen in the way the kind of arrangements, the hospitality arrangements, the actual format of the meeting itself? How's that changed over that period?
It changed immensely. It changed so much because in those days, when you had a meeting and a convention, whoever was in charge didn't have much experience in meetings, and they just spoke from what they knew. You didn't hear much about research. You didn't hear about that. And we had speakers who knew what they were doing on the job, whatever the job might be. Hardly ever got into technology and history and what went on here and what went on there and what we learned from this and what we learned from that. You never heard that. It was just, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this better? How should we do this? What do you think about this? And a lot of discussion going on. Of course, now, you go to a meeting, it's very well organized. A lot of research has been done. A lot of history has been accumulated, the research on the organization. And it's better. It's really better. It has done a lot better for the companies themselves. They've improved. Hopefully they've improved based on the meetings. And the people who attend the meetings now are being educated on how to do their job better. Because you have speakers that talk specifically about the audience. When it used to be an audience, nobody measured the audience. No, you just went there and you listened and then you went home. Now we talk about the audience and how we can make them do things better and what we're going to deliver are people and speeches and things that would be helpful to them in their job or what they're doing or in their life. More about the individual.
It's the takeaway idea, isn't it?
Yes, it's a big thing about takeaway. Before it wasn't.
Yeah. And what about the food offering at these conventions? Has that improved or?
Oh yeah, well, it's become a little bit more elaborate than what we were used to. The basic eggs and sausage and eggs for breakfast now. So it's a little bit more elaborate. Now, of course, COVID has changed everything and lots of new things happening. But COVID became a little bit more elaborate, and we had more cocktail parties, more receptions than it used to be. And the food got a little, people are more particular about the food. In those days, you were happy to go to get anything. Oh, we had a banquet. Whoa, wow, this is really something. It was a big deal to go to a banquet. Now it's not a big deal to go to a banquet. There's so many going on. And I got the little favorite. They like this, and this one don't like rice, and this one likes spaghetti. And before it didn't matter. Whatever you fed us was fine. It was a big treat going to a convention and going to a banquet. Wow, that's something. Never had this stuff at home. Now it's a lot different.
Yeah.
to be able to appeal to the senses of the people. People like, now you have choices. Now you go to a banquet, a meeting, you can sign up for a health-wise meal,
Yeah.
uh,
I know, because these days we're selling experiences, aren't we? We never thought about it like that before, did
that's
we?
right. Before, nothing. This is what you got, and that's what you ate, and everybody loved it.
Yeah, I think people were probably a lot more accepting in those days.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Howard, I just wanted to say this has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and reminisce and also give you a chance to put, your experience and your legacy on into digital format, so people can look back on it as well and kind of think about, that's where we came from and this is where we are now. So I really appreciate your time today, and
Well,
I hope you enjoyed yourself, thinking back and.
yeah, it was a good experience just thinking back on things. I'm glad you thought of it. I appreciate you doing this. I feel honored that I was selected to be interviewed for this.
Good.
But I enjoyed, getting back and thinking about things. And now I'm thinking that I'm going to go back and find my old paper file. I got loads of stuff I've collected. Now, I've written 2 books already. I don't know if you know that. And I don't know how they were received, but anyway, I was able to get that published. But I've got a lot of stuff in file. I got to see what I did. Certain questions came up during this interview that I couldn't respond to.
But Howard, thanks very much. I'm going to go through the footage, and then I'm going to create the video that will go. So there might be some bits that are taken out and stuff like that. I want to keep, the main points and the real authentic stories I want to keep in there as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I've done that.
Yeah, if anything comes up that I've missed that you think about that we could have covered, drop me a note. Let me know. And
Yeah, I will.
I can.
Yeah, because you can wear the same shirt and sit in the same spot, and we'll just redo it.
Yeah, sit in the same place. Yeah. That's my sweatshirt I wear around the house. I didn't get dressed up for this.
So, Howard, what